Hey folks, Steve here with another Dark Summer video. In this video, we'll be looking at turn 4 of the game. We've now completed 3, so we're maybe getting close to a third of the way through the game. And this is, as a reminder, technically playthrough number 2. We stopped playthrough number 1 after the first 2 turns because I had done extremely poorly as the Germans, and on the advice of Ted, we re-racked it. So this game's going a little bit better for the Germans, though they are feeling the pressure. Some very strong reinforcements have allowed the Germans to entertain the idea that they can hold on to some places, but it's going to be tight. It's going to be tough. Um, Before I get too far into the video, I just want to get a couple of housekeeping stuff out of the way. Ted did mention that, obviously you can have a division's worth of units all in one hex to be, cohesive, but it does help sometimes to take a unit and, come out a hex or something to help with the Zocs, and that's something I've tried to keep in mind. Um, I want to be doing that where I can. And in some cases, it's a matter of movement. So like getting a whole stack somewhere together, moving them as a group as far as they can go. Maybe it'd have been better to move some units, an extra hex, but they may not always have the movement to get there. But it's something I'm thinking about, right? We did some of that over in the east part of the map where I had separated out some units just to kind of give a little bit of Zoc coverage to keep the British from just running out the gate. Of course, they're kind of doing that, up here anyway. One other thing on the last video, I won't say the user's name just because it doesn't make sense to just like I don't know. I don't think it really matters who it was. Somebody had left a comment that I got the notification for on my app that someone commented on the last video, and I could see it in my notifications, the content of that comment. And then when I actually went to the video to respond, the comment was gone. I suspect that YouTube had auto-moderated and removed that comment because it made a indirect reference to violence. Not like I understood what the comment was saying. Like I didn't care. It wasn't like it was fine right to me. I understood the sentiment, but whatever auto bot moderator saw that and said, "Oh, that doesn't look good," and they removed it. So I just want to throw out there, I did not remove that. I didn't care. YouTube removed it on my behalf, as far as I can tell, or I can't see the comment anymore. Maybe it was deleted. I don't know, but to get that out in the clear, I didn't remove anything, but I was something to the effect of like, the German high command would not treat me very well based on my previous performance, and I suppose that is why they're the bad guys. And yes, probably didn't do very well last game. Of course, the Germans aren't doing that great this game either, to be honest. We've got a lot of problem areas as I come back to look at the map, and I'm going, oh, that's not good. That's not good. Um, but as the Germans, that's just you taking your kicks and your licks in this one, and I do think, at least so far, that's colored my experience with the game a little bit, where it's like, with the Dark Summer, with the Dark Summer, you're portraying Normandy, and there's only really one way that's probably going to go. Like, there's different ways it can end up, maybe, but like the Allies are going to come onto the continent, they're going to kick butt, and that's what's going to happen. But if you compare that to like the Dark Valley or the Dark Sands, or that neat game done by Revolution Games, um, there's some element of both sides get to be on the offensive at some point in the game, where they have both the initiative and the drive and even the forces to entertain counterattacks at a large enough scale that both sides are on attack and defense. Knowing that like this is obviously a very defensive game for the Germans, it's like, okay, they don't get what little counterattack capability they really get. I maybe have done too much to like separate them. Maybe I need them all together to focus and punch a hole in the American line or something like that was feasible. Maybe I should be trying to do that. but it's also like, well, I'm trying to stay alive. I'm trying to keep the game running, and defend and pull back and all that kind of stuff. The there's like a there's a historically there was like a failed counteroffensive that was done to capture Avranches, which the victory points and the victory conditions sort of entertain the idea that the Germans are going to try to cut off the Americans that have gone off to the Brittany port areas, the Brittany box in this game, to try to capture this, right, and sort of close the door behind some Americans. I mean, it's certainly an advantageous thing to try, but I don't know. I don't know how realistic that really is for us. We haven't gotten that far into the game, right? So it's tough for that reason. I think just looking at like as the Germans, maybe much like Fall of the Third Reich, another game designed by Ted that I like, but there's something you have to accept, which is one side is going to be on the defensive, getting their butts kicked a bit throughout the whole game, and you're just how well you play is based on how well you can defend. And I think many folks find it more fun to be on the attack. Now, playing solo, this really isn't a big deal, right? I get to play both sides, so really I just get to focus on being the cool allies. But I can imagine maybe in some opposed games where the German player is going to have to accept that they're on the retreat in this game, and what they need to do is they're really playing the big strategic perspective, which is try to keep your forces in as good a shape as possible to pull back eventually to the west wall. But none of that's in this game, right? So you're just trying to get in the very late game off the map, and well, we're not even in a really good position to do any of that yet. So probably main strategic thing I need to keep in mind is I don't want to get outflanked over here to where I don't have very many good places to pull off the Germans off the map, and so like kind of this is messed up. These guys got to pull back. They need to shorten the line. They need to pull back. We need to get some more strength into this middle section that's looking a little rough. We got to figure out some way to kind of slow the British down over here. So there's plenty of stuff to do as the Germans. It's just, it might not be as fun as kicking in the door when you're on offense, right? Okay, so that's enough preamble. Let's go ahead and pull the weather chit for the next turn. Still plenty of different results that could come up. And we pull rain. So this is actually quite good for the Germans. They definitely prefer it to be rain. What does that do? The movement cost of clear terrain for German units is reduced to 1, so they're very thankful for that. This now, granted, there's not much clear terrain left to move in, but they're happy for it. The Germans do get use of their artillery marker, so that's pretty potent, pretty strong, can help. Certainly. And all the really bad stuff that went on earlier with, not being able to use road movement, that doesn't matter. The Allies can't do prepared offensives. There's no defender shift for the Allies due to air power and all that kind of stuff. So I think, I even have to double check, I don't think that the tactical air resources of the Allies can be used either, which makes sense. So I'll be double checking some of that just to make sure I don't screw it up. But this could be a good turn, really, for the Germans to kind of reassess where things are at and figure out what they can do. Because the Allies can't do a prepared offensive, which would be useful, I think, as the British along the line here right now, knowing that that's not really an option, I think we may, as the Allies, choose to do a movement as the first action so they can get some reinforcements on the board, and critically get some units into the Cherbourg box so that we can try to shut that down this turn. I think that's what we would want to do. So the activation chit recipe for this turn for rain is if the U.S. just gets, they get 2 mover combat, so they're going to get 1 of each, basically, is what I'm going to probably end up doing. The British get 1 movement, 1 combat. The Germans get 3 movement or combat and 3 reactions. So lots of German activity on a rain turn. So they're very happy for that. This will make things tougher for the Allies to make headway here. But I think the Americans will focus on shutting down Cherbourg. I think the British will focus on shutting down stuff in the way northeast of the map and just continuing to work their way across. And I think the Germans are going to try to use this opportunity, bring in their reinforcements, re-solidify the line, and maybe find some decent counterattack options to kind of knock the Allies off balance. So I'll take care of the American move off camera, and we come back, we'll start pulling chits. Okay, here we are after the American move, and then I also used a reaction chit. Since we kind of have a whole bunch of them, it makes sense we could actually just choose to react after each allied chit if we really wanted to. So I would have done something with these guys on the reaction, but as part of the American move, the Americans actually pulled out of the Marigny town here, Marigny, however that's pronounced, pulled back because I noticed they were kind of too far out and could have easily been surrounded and potentially eliminated. So I pulled the armor back. But that allowed the reaction of the Germans to pull back the 3rd Fallschirmjäger division around a little bit to try to create a better setup for themselves. So they chose to do that. I did the replacements off camera. It wasn't great. The Americans basically used a infantry. They got an ore, it's a mech or an infantry. They needed the infantry more, so they replenished an infantry unit. The Germans ultimately did the same because they needed to reinforce this center position here a little bit, and so they chose to put a step in there, and the British didn't get any. So not a great replacements turn for anybody, but there you go. The American reinforcements I had come down here to just kind of help support the beat up armor that had lost a unit basically due to being too far extended. So the Germans are in Sonlo again. That was from last turn. It's sort of the game position where we had captured it, but it just became too tough to hold. But the Americans are currently set up with a whole bunch of units in the Cherbourg box, which, just for ease, I have this set up here. Right now, I won't show all the math again, but it comes out to be 3-1 because the Germans are so beat up in the Cherbourg box. We have many pretty strong, decent units in there. It's only 5 to 6, 7 steps of Germans anyway, so even if we got an exchange result. But basically, the Americans just want their combat round to come up. They'll finish taking Cherbourg, and then they can start to come back down south to operate. The other thing that they have to figure out is when to pull back the airborne units. And I have to kind of look at this because I think I may be running out of time to do it. I have to look it up because now is kind of a dangerous spot. And we will have to pull those guys off at some point soon. I don't want to give victory points to the Germans, basically, and that's really what that is going to come down to. Great. I'm having a hard time finding that in the rules. Okay, well, that was the German move and reaction. I'll need to double check the rules here. If it makes sense, I may end up pulling units away now. The paratrooper units out now because I don't want to give the Germans any victory points. But I need to reread the rules for that, so I'll do that. I'll be right back. Okay, so double checking the rule. It is checked at the end of turn 5, so we don't have to do it this turn. I'll do it next turn. The only trick is if we draw Storm as the weather next turn, which is going to be a 1 in 6 chance, we won't be able to pull them off, and we'll give a bunch of victory points to the Germans. So I think the British will probably look to pull off their paratroopers and gliders and whatever this turn. The Americans will wait until next turn, and we'll go from there. It doesn't matter for victory points. see. Yeah, it doesn't matter if they've taken step losses. So I want to keep the paratroopers on to help with Cherbourg, and then we'll pull everybody else back. But what I need to make sure is we have enough forces elsewhere to come off, because like here, these guys would get, would leave a big gaping hole uh, behind, and we don't really want that to happen. But we have enough units that we could maybe fix that up. So I don't know, just something I need to watch is the Americans. But we'll go to the cup and we'll see what comes up next. Very likely could be a German chit. And we get the British move. So British move, they'll get some reinforcements, and we'll see what happens here. Probably want to keep, pressing against the Germans and figuring out what they can do up there. So we may even be looking at a combined action. Honestly, that might be more valuable for them to try. So I'll think through it and we'll come back. Okay, here we are after the British move. Nothing too crazy, really. I mean, it's just getting, we moved some stuff around, relatively solid front line here. I did move the reinforcing Canadians that we got in this turn up to here to kind of help poke out, and they have pretty good defense factors, better than they are on offense, so they're a good hold position here to open the way for other British units to come in, and it will be harder for these German units to try to counterattack them here. They use their own reinforcement or replacement value, so if they take some hits, that's kind of okay right now. And I just made some adjustments up here to shut some of these things down. And that's all we really got. Oh, I should mention, I have pulled off all of the remaining British Rangers and, so what we got, Special Service and their paratroopers. The glider unit had already been destroyed, which gave the Germans their one victory point that they had achieved for destroying that unit, but now we've pulled those off for the British, so at the very least, even if it's a storm turn next turn, the British won't be giving those victory points to the Germans, so they're pretty good shape. And yeah, and I was thinking, should the Germans do a reaction move? But what they have right now is there are basically 2 more Allied chits in the cup, and the Germans can save those reactions till after those and just hope that we pull German chits and just do lots of stuff we would want to do. So I think they're cool to sit on the reaction chits for the moment. And we'll pull the next chit from the cup and we'll see just what we get. And we do indeed get a German mover combat. I do think a movement is in order so they can get their reinforcements on the board, so they are going to do that. And we'll roll. And they rolled a 2 for the, they still have third turn reinforcements that didn't come in, so I'll have to figure this out as to what's going to get sent out, but we'll take care of it. So we'll be right back, and we'll have done the German reinforcements. In movement, we're probably going to shore this up. We're going to try to get into a better position, maybe reinforce over here, and just clean up our line and try to get a little better positioned. We'll see what happens. Okay, here we are after German movement. You can see a little bit of retraction along the lines. Basically, we're making it so that when the American combat chit comes up, which would be the next, really any Allied combat chit that comes up, there's not going to be any obvious good attacks. I pulled away from where the British have strength out here. I've moved up and around in certain places to kind of just make it so that even when these combat chits come up, they're just not going to have a really good, obvious place to go. And basically, wastes a turn of Allied combats where they're not getting anywhere. And then when the Germans get their next movement chit, we'll be able to get some of these guys fixed up into the line. And kind of, I'm in a weird spot over here because I would really like to get back into that bocage. But I'll hopefully be able to do that after the Allies go a little bit so we can get some decent strength units actually in the bocage. I had to shuffle some units around. Things were a little dicey. I'm trying to bring a 21st Panzer unit back over here who was way out here and didn't need to be anymore because of other reinforcements. So just generally trying to steward the Germans as well as I can this turn, since this is such a good turn for them, that they can operate swiftly, and hope they get in a good position. So we're going to pull in the cup again, and we pull Allied combat. So there are some places that I think the British would like to attack. They're just a little beat up right now. Yeah, if they attack here, this might be a little rough. We'll see what happens there. They could attack over here. A couple different places, just really hard to say if there's anywhere really smart to try to attack. But yeah, we'll see. I'll think through this. I mean, it might be worth attacking in a couple of places. I'm just not sure how well they would go if I did. Probably badly, right? That's why the Germans set up the way they did. But you know, how much risk do the British want to take? I guess that's the real question, because it's how much risk with the rolls do they want to take to try to batter the German line. So I'll take care of that off camera. We'll see the end results. Okay, here we are after the British combat. Not a whole lot to really show. Many of these attacks indeed couldn't get very far. The German use of their asset chits, whether we're talking about the assault guns or their artillery, have helped in some places, but the British also rolled quite well. So we forced a DR star result here, and have pushed the Germans back. Whoops, there we go. Out this direction. And then we did have an attack on that last strong point, which achieved a retreat result, which removed it. The British have tentatively, inched forward. And I was having to double check the rules here a little bit. I mean, I don't want to extend out too far because then we lose ZOC coverage right here. I did plop a unit here. Here's some funkiness. The E map notation here is like an Eastern exit box, right? The Germans can place replacements there, but there's a special note that only German infantry can come in there. But the rules also say that none of the Germans or British or whatever can leave the map via this to go to the Eastern exit box. Now that the British have controlled the city here, we can begin thinking about putting units off into the Eastern exit box, but we can't do it up here. What we do want to do is plop a unit in the city itself so that we are in the city, or in the hex that is associated with that E notation. And I believe that will mean that the Germans can't put reinforcements there. So we'll have, we won't have moved off into the eastern box. We won't be putting one of these, British exit markers in that space. But we will effectively be doing the same thing by plopping a unit there. He just has to stay there and has to stay in good shape. But I think, the British are going to be situated to kind of be pressing down this way now while they can, and the Germans are going to have to figure out how to defend it. So, yeah, I think that's their move. I don't think there's a whole lot more that could be done to salvage that situation. I think the Germans just need to accept right now that they're not going to get, they're not going to get back up here. They're going to have to fall back and figure out how to defend this major road line and everything else. And so here is the part where it's like, well, do I do a reaction shit? I might as well, or use it or I lose it. And it's a question of, well, what do I want to do with it? The British are done for the turn, so I can wait until the next German movement to resituate this. If anything, I would probably want to use the German reaction to punish the British somewhere, or punish the Americans somewhere. Try to hit them with something before the American combat phase. So yeah, I think we'll do that with a German reaction shit, second of our three, and figure out where I want to go with them. I do think it might make sense to try to hit one of these stacks just to weaken them, with like one of our mechanized units, one of our mechanized divisions, I think that would make sense to try. There's just not a lot of like really good places to do it. It's all very iffy. So let me think through that, and we'll come back after the reaction and get on with the chip pulling. Okay, so I used the reaction shit to do something kind of lame, but I had to fix it. I had to fix some units around here because I wasn't stacking correctly, so I activated the 21st Panzer Division and got situated a little bit differently here to defend in the bocage, and that's what I did. So not a perfect action, but it sort of got stuck in a weird state where I was stacking incorrectly, and I figured as a part of the fix, I would just do movement and resolve the issue. So we'll go ahead and pull the next chit from the cup. Oh, that's the wrong cup. And what do we get? We get German movement or combat. I think, let's see. I think we would want to do combat here because what I would rather do is save our move for last, knowing that, you know, the Allies will go first next time, so we can just do some basic combat if we want, and I'm not sure there's really anywhere that we want to go with that combat, to be honest. I think maybe we could try over here. But I think the problem is that the Americans will still have their assault guns, which are quite strong and potent even in the rain, I believe. Let's see. Once per turn on either attack or defense. Yeah. So in terms of combat, you know, what I was thinking about was trying to do something over here. That's 9. Be 9 to 9, not great. But I could try to attack here. Have it be 24 to 12, but then the Allies would just throw in their assault markers and make it 24 to 14, which still becomes 1 to 1, which then goes down to 1 to 2, and not really a good idea. So I really don't think there's anywhere that the Germans can attack that really makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, everywhere I'm looking on the board, maybe here, 12, 20 to 12, 22 to 12, still wouldn't, you get 1 to 1 odds, which really wouldn't do much for us, to be honest. It risks us taking a step loss for not really a whole lot of gain if we did something over here. I really don't see any advantage to attacking right now. Yeah, there's just too many plays. It's just too difficult. Having 22 attack factors just doesn't get us where we need to be. So I'm willing to say no combat. You know, we're not forced to have combat, and I think we're okay to wait. I just don't think there's much the Germans could actually achieve if they attacked here. You know, a lot of these would just be 20 to 18, then reduced down to 1 to 2, and you could still maybe make some you could still maybe make some rolls that could make a difference. You know, 1 to 2, you maybe force a retreat, and then the Germans have an opportunity to disrupt. You know, like if we knock these guys aside and then on the move, the Germans race up this way, well, that's great, but then they get immediately shut out of supply and then they get picked off in the backfield. We could try to run back here and have some capability to like close a beachhead, but it's not going to be enough to take out both before the Americans can bring in reinforcements and knock those guys out of supply. So it's like, is there any point. I mean, we could try it, right? We'd say, okay, we're going to try to attack here. We're going to try to blow open a hole. These guys have 18. These guys have 20. I'm like screwing up my stack here. 20 to 18. That's 1 to 1. 1 to 1. Doesn't matter if you try to put defense factors or attack factors in. You go down to 1 to 2. If you roll the die, you get an AL1. Oh, well, there you go. Foolish of me to do that, but it maybe worth a shot, right? You got to force a retreat. They go back. You start to be able to manipulate the field a little bit, but instead we lost an SS step. So I don't know, not good. We go to the cup, and we pull. Now we pull the German move, which is not really what we wanted. We did not want that. So let me take care of the German movement off camera, and it's basically just going to mean that the final actions are American combat and then reaction. So I'll take care of the German movement, and then we'll talk about the American combat. Okay, here we are after the German move, and it really was all about, reconfiguring our line a little bit and even pulling back in some spaces away from clear hexes, just to ensure that we just are making use of the ridge lines, basically everything that we can to make this difficult for the British and the Americans to move forward from here. Now we go to, the next chit out of the cup is American combat, so we have to adjudicate that. I think for sure the Allies are just going to do Cherbourg combat. So again, if I look at this, we've got, 25 combat factors, 22, and then another 24, and there's 22. So it is 3 to 1 here on the Cherbourg table. There's no need to throw in any assets. That the Americans could throw in some tank destroyers, but I don't think there's a reason to. And basically, as long as we don't roll a 1, it will be a Cherbourg surrenders. So we rolled a 6. Go figure. And the U.S. loses 1 die roll's worth of steps, but never less than 3. Okay, well, I rolled a 1, which means we'll lose 3. I think they're going to go ahead and have that come off of the paratroopers because they're gonna leave, right? So they can take the 3 step loss. It doesn't matter. As long as they're not fully eliminated, the Germans don't get victory points. And then the rest of these guys are all lost in the dead pile off far away. Which means we do have a American control of Cherbourg. And technically all these guys are in there, but we'll probably have the Americans, all leave Cherbourg behind after this, basically. Say Cherbourg is captured. So there you go. Cherbourg is done. And now, are there any other comments we'd want to make? It's kind of tough to say. There's not really very many good places for combat at the moment. Truly not. Maybe, let's see, 20 to 9. No, I don't think that would be very useful. 22 to 11 would be 2 to 1, and then would reduce down to 1 to 2. And I don't really like how that looks. These guys are quite strong. Yeah, the tricky thing is right now it's very difficult to get anything more than a 1 to 2 just because of the bocage in many places and the basic positioning of the units, and we're just more likely to hurt ourselves, which it's tough, right? Like the Allies can, in theory, can afford to take more damage in that way, but it is awfully tough. So we could go ahead and try here. It's a 1 to 2. I rolled a 3, which is a no effect, so it doesn't matter. And then here, likewise, it ended up being 1 of 2. And it's actually an AL1, amusingly enough, so these guys are weakened a little bit. So Allies not getting very far. Those numbers would come out to be that way even with assets used, because the Allies don't have access to their air. That's sort of the real problem. They can't do much. And then the final action of the turn would be a German reaction shit. Do we actually feel like there's anything that can be done with this shit? Right now, probably not. There might be, we could try to make something happen over here. Though it would still be not very good. Ultimately, not very good. So I don't think the Germans do any, do they want to move anything? Well, a lot of these guys are beat up. It's hard to project much power with them. No, I think we're good. I mean, I really don't think there's much else we can do. There's some obvious weak points on the German line, but there's nothing that the Allies can do about it right now. If they want to do a movement next turn, beginning of next turn, they can go ahead and do that, but I don't think it immediately endangers the German line. So I think that is really it for the turn. If I look at the sequence of play, is there anybody suffering attrition right now? No, I think everyone is in pretty good shape for supply, and then the victory phase. So any victory points? Well, Cherbourg was captured on turn 4, which does give the Allies 2 victory points. So now, capture of Cherbourg on turn 4, that was the case. So they get 2 victory points. The Allies are at 3 victory points, Germans at 1. I do not believe anything else. They got the Armache Labaine, but that's like a freebie almost. Nothing else really counts right now. The Germans don't really have anything else. They're not going to get any victory points for Cherbourg. And then the real question is going to be, are there any, is next turn a storm turn? That's a 1 in 6 chance. And if it is, then the Germans are going to get some victory points for these paratroopers that didn't get pulled off yet, and various units across the map that will go. But I guess the Allies are sitting here hoping that they don't draw a storm and they can pull these units out, get a first move, fix that overall situation there, and still be in pretty good shape. And I think they'll be able to do that. So we'll see. So okay, there you go, guys. That's turn 4 of the Dark Summer. I think this was, as the weather would indicate, a pretty good turn for the Germans. They were able to do what they needed to kind of maintain something of a line. They still have some more things they probably need to think about doing to, maybe I should have pulled back here more. I did not do that yet. That might have been a mistake, now that I'm looking at it, but oh well. But they've still managed to somewhat contain, the beachhead. The Allies do now have a major port in Cherbourg, so from here it's just going to be tough fighting through the bocage and everything else, I think. Okay, well, yeah, there we go, guys. Next video will be turn 5, and once we complete that, we'll be halfway through the game at that point, so we're still working through it. Hope you enjoyed. If there's comments you want to leave, go ahead and do that down below. Your thoughts on how the game is going, and maybe I'm still doing badly as the Germans, but I think this was a good turn. So yeah, catch you in the next one, guys. Take care. Keep on gaming.